I was really lucky, because I kind of started at the top. You go to number 2 in the charts with your first record and...
What if the greatest love story of a generation was never told? Not because it didn't happen, but because one man chose silence over spotlight. For more than 6 decades, Cliff Richard stood in the limelight, smiling, singing, and carrying the image of Britain's golden boy of pop. From #1 hits to knighthood, his career has been a tapestry of success, perseverance, and charm. But behind the fame and polished persona, Cliff carried a truth that he never revealed. For years, fans wondered why he never married. Why a man with fame, faith, and fortune remained alone. It wasn't that he hadn't loved. He had, profoundly, but he never told her. And now, the woman he silently adored for over 4 decades is gone. Her name was Olivia Newton-John, and with her passing in 2022, Cliff Richard finally broke his silence. He called her the love of his life, a revelation that stunned fans and cast a new light over the choices he made, the life he lived, and the quiet ache he carried. By the time Cliff reached his 40s, he was more than a pop star. He was an icon, beloved by generations. Yet while millions knew his music, few ever truly understood the man. He had cultivated an image that was clean, scandal-free, and steadfast in faith. But love? That part of his life had always seemed elusive. Many speculated, some questioned. Others simply accepted that he had chosen a life of solitude. The truth, however, was far more tender and heartbreakingly human. Cliff first met Olivia Newton-John in the early 1970s, when her voice was beginning to charm the world with its soft purity and unmistakable warmth. While the public fell for her music, Cliff saw something more. Through industry events, charity galas, and television specials, their paths crossed often. Olivia was young, radiant, grounded. Everything Cliff admired in a woman. She was ambitious but humble, graceful but unassuming. She had this light, he would later say, not just as a singer but as a human being. And Cliff, who had always guarded his emotions closely, began to fall. At the time Olivia was engaged, Cliff, ever a man of principle and respect, made a quiet vow not to interfere. She was spoken for, he later explained, and I respected that. You don't step into what isn't yours to touch. So instead he offered friendship, genuine, deep, and enduring. They shared laughter backstage, duets that required no rehearsal, and glances that said more than words ever could. But behind the smiles and easy companionship, Cliff was carrying something he never said aloud. In his 2008 autobiography, My Life, My Way, Cliff confessed, "Yes, I did fall in love with her, but I never told her." Just like that, years of mystery around his romantic life started to make sense. The bachelorhood, the short-lived relationships, the sense of quiet reserve, was it all rooted in that one unspoken love? It appeared so. While Olivia went on to marry, build a family, and continue her rise as a beloved global figure, Cliff remained the loyal friend, the man always nearby but never in the center of her story. Cliff's choice to remain silent wasn't about fear. It was about timing, integrity, and deeply held values. He had made vows early on, some to his faith, some to his family, and others to his public role. After the death of his father at age 21, Cliff became the man of the house. Fame had just arrived, but so had grief. He took it upon himself to support his mother and sisters. "I had showbiz in my blood," he once said, "but my heart was tied to my family. I couldn't let them down." That duty informed every decision, including the ones involving his heart. He embraced Christianity in the 1960s, not as a public relations move but as a personal anchor. While other stars of his era indulged in fame's excesses, Cliff stood apart. He steered clear of scandal, focusing instead on his music, his faith, and his reputation. Romance became a difficult terrain. He dated, one of the most public relationships was with tennis star Sue Barker, but nothing ever truly lasted. Cliff would later describe those relationships as false alarms, and many fans began to wonder, was he still holding on to Olivia all along, As the years passed, his feelings for her never faded. If anything, they grew stronger. But the moment to act had come and gone. Olivia had moved forward with her life. Cliff, in turn, remained the steadfast friend. He supported her career, her causes, her happiness. He never tried to disrupt what she had. And Olivia? She never knew, not really. Their friendship remained rich and sincere. When they sang together, like in their emotional duet, suddenly, those paying close attention could sense something more. Behind the lyrics, behind the harmonies, was a man singing beside the woman he loved but could never claim. Friends noticed the way he looked at her, the way his tone softened when he said her name. But Cliff never gave anything away to the tabloids. He was careful, always dignified and heartbreakingly discreet. She was one of the finest people I've ever known, he'd often say in interviews. I always feel better when I've seen her. What he didn't say, until recently, was that she was the woman who stayed in his heart long after everyone else had gone. When Olivia died in August of 2022 after her long battle with cancer, the world mourned. Tributes flooded in. Celebrities, fans, musicians. Everyone seemed to have a memory, a song, a moment. But Cliff's tribute stood out, not because it was loud, but because it was quietly devastating. In a public letter and a few reflective interviews, he finally said what he had hidden for over 40 years. She was the love of my life, and she never knew. For fans who had followed Cliff's journey from the 1950s through his 80s, it was like watching a man unlock a door he'd kept shut forever. There was no performance in his voice, no showman's polish. Just raw, honest grief and at last truth. He wasn't bitter. He wasn't angry. He was full of gratitude. He had chosen not to interfere, not to confess, not to complicate. And though it left him with a hollow space in his heart, he believed it was the right choice. He didn't lose Olivia because he never truly had her, but in a way, he always did. As she rose to international fame, particularly after Grease, he remained proud. Never overshadowed, never envious, only joyful for her success. He once admitted that watching her shine brought both pride and pain. The press saw Cliff's smiles and praise. They never saw the silent heartbreak underneath. Over the decades, he continued to perform, to inspire, to live with unwavering faith and conviction. He sold more than 250 million records, received a knighthood from Queen Elizabeth II, and continued to fill concert halls with devoted fans. But he never married. He never had children. And now we know why. When Cliff Richard finally opened up about Olivia, it wasn't for attention. It was for her. To honor the memory of someone who had given him joy simply by being herself. She had the voice, the presence, the kindness, he said. But what people forget is how real she was. No ego, just heart. It's rare to hear someone speak of unrequited love without bitterness. Cliff did just that. He didn't dwell on what might have been. Instead, he treasured what was friendship, connection, presence. Yet, even with all his gratitude, his voice carried something unfinished. I often wondered what might have happened, he once admitted. A simple sentence, but one that revealed decades of longing and restraint. Now, at 83, Cliff is no longer just a pop legend. He's a living story of grace, humility, and emotional honesty. By finally telling the world about his love for Olivia Newton-John, he gave fans something more valuable than a hit record. He gave them a piece of his truth. This wasn't a scandal. This wasn't some tabloid revelation. This was love. Real, respectful, quietly enduring love. The kind that doesn't demand attention. The kind that holds on without needing to possess. The kind many of us know but rarely speak of. As the final curtain fell on the 1980s, Cliff Richard stood quietly behind the spotlight, his silhouette cast longer by the glow of another star, Olivia Newton-John. Their bond had deepened through decades, yet Cliff never crossed the line between closeness and confession. He was a man bound by time, loyalty, and timing that never bent in his favor. Olivia, radiant and unstoppable, moved forward with her life, while Cliff remained an unwavering presence, her confidant and constant, yet always just out of emotional reach. The love he carried wasn't a thunderclap. It was a soft, continuous hum, unnoticed by most but powerful in its persistence. While Olivia embraced new chapters, marriage, motherhood, and a career that skyrocketed into pop culture history, Cliff became a fixture at her side, always cheering, never interfering. Even when the media buzzed with excitement over his high-profile relationship with tennis legend Sue Barker, something in his demeanor hinted at hesitation. Whispers of engagement surfaced and faded like morning mist. Fans hoped, speculated, analyzed, but Cliff called his romantic life a string of false starts, and only years later would we understand why. His heart had long ago settled elsewhere, and he had chosen to guard that love in silence. Why would a man of Cliff's stature, knighted, revered, adored, choose quiet devotion over personal fulfillment? The answer didn't come in a headline or tell-all memoir. It came in a soft, shaken voice, decades later when Olivia was gone. Her passing in the 2022 hit the world like a slow-moving thunderstorm. Beautiful, inevitable, and hard to accept. The tributes that flooded in painted her as a legend, but it was Cliff's that cut deepest. Not loud, not flashy, just a simple truth, long buried. She was the love of my life, and she never knew. Imagine carrying that kind of truth for over 40 years. It wasn't fear that kept him quiet, nor regret. It was grace, timing, respect. He had watched her bloom, celebrated her triumphs, and protected her from what he knew might only complicate her path. They shared stages, spotlights, and songs, especially one ballad so emotionally charged that fans have since gone back to study every glance, every harmony, trying to decode what now seems obvious. Could the pain behind his smile have always been about her? The answer feels etched into every duet, every affectionate quote in old interviews where he danced around her name like a prayer, too sacred to speak aloud. And now that he has finally said it, the weight of all those years presses down on the present. Not as a tragedy, but as a testament to the kind of love most people never recognize until it's too late. How many people, after all, spend their entire lives next to the person they love and never say a word? As Olivia rose to global fame, especially after the explosive success of Grease, Cliff remained her silent supporter. The film turned her into a cultural phenomenon overnight, her name etched into music history. Yet Cliff, despite his own mammoth success and worldwide fan base, never let envy creep in. There was only pride. And maybe something else. An ache buried just deep enough that only the most attentive could see it. He once described her as having everything. But what struck most was how often he emphasized her humility. No ego, just heart, he said in one interview. And perhaps that's why he never wanted to disturb her life. She had found peace, and he wouldn't be the one to shift its balance. What kind of strength does it take to love someone completely and ask for nothing in return? When Olivia passed, Cliff's voice cracked, not from performance, but from pain. Gone was the polish, the public mask. What remained was the man, raw and real. His words weren't soaked in regret, but in reverence. He hadn't just lost a friend. He'd lost the silent cornerstone of his emotional world. He shared stories, called her pure light, and for the first time, let the world glimpse the depth of what he'd carried. It was a revelation that made fans gasp, not in shock, but in recognition. Because who hasn't held back words they wish they'd said? This wasn't a tabloid love story. There were no secret rendezvous, no exposed letters. Just two lives running parallel, tethered by something unspoken and unshakable. Cliff could have used that love for drama or attention. He never did. That restraint may have cost him personally, but it preserved something rare: dignity in longing. As he spoke of her, the world saw something not often associated with fame: emotional integrity. And maybe that's the part of Cliff we never fully appreciated until now. Cliff Richard's legacy, at 83, stretches far beyond his record-breaking hits. With over 250 million albums sold, chart toppers in every decade from the 1950s onward, and knighthood honors from the Queen herself, his public accomplishments are staggering. Yet, it's his quiet revelations in recent years that have left the most lasting impression. His decision not to marry wasn't about faith alone or lack of opportunity. It was about choice. A choice to respect a boundary, to cherish a connection without claiming it. And even in the opulence of his success, Cliff's life mirrors this duality. His portfolio is the picture of high-class discretion. A sprawling Portuguese estate once dubbed his spiritual retreat, a collection of Rolls-Royces and Bentleys driven sparingly, and a passion for vintage Patek Philippe timepieces that rivals any watch connoisseurs. He reportedly holds insurance not only on his vocal cords, but on rare memorabilia, and his business interests, ranging from vineyards to charitable foundations, reflect a careful balance of wealth and purpose. What sets him apart, financially and personally, is that he never chased extravagance for the sake of image. He chased meaning. That's the real luxury. It's this contrast that fascinates. Cliff Richard, once the rebellious teen idol who sparked Beatlemania-level hysteria across Britain, has evolved into a symbol of understated resilience. In a world where celebrity headlines are often bloated with scandal, his story feels almost out of place, yet more relevant than ever. What do we make of a man who had it all, yet still longed for the one thing he couldn't name until it was gone? The deeper truth is this: Cliff didn't just survive fame, he transcended it. He offered the world not just his voice, but a version of love most of us aren't brave enough to live. One without guarantees, without returns, without ever crossing the threshold into certainty. And in the end, he gave Olivia Newton-John not just applause, not just memories, but the kind of devotion that outlives all of it. As his story enters its final chapters, Cliff no longer needs the approval of charts or critics. The honesty of his final tribute has already sealed his place in hearts across the globe. In the silence he once chose and the truth he finally spoke, there's a lesson about timing, grace, and love that doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes the loudest love is the one never spoken. And maybe that's what lingers. Not just the voice, not just the fame, but the courage it takes to carry love without needing to be seen. For Cliff Richard, Olivia wasn't just a memory. She was the melody beneath every chorus, the echo behind every encore. The story we thought we knew now sounds entirely different. The more Cliff opened up, the more poignant the portrait became. Fans began to rewatch old interviews, listen to past performances with new ears, catching subtle moments they'd missed before, but a pause in his voice, a lingering glance, a laugh that lasted just a second too long. In hindsight, it all made sense. The emotional undertones were always there, hidden behind the polished smile of a performer who learned early on to guard what mattered most. It wasn't just that he didn't tell her, it was that he made peace with not telling her. And that's where the ache lies. In the acceptance, not the regret. Their story resonates deeply because it's not about grand gestures or Hollywood endings. It's about the power of unspoken loyalty, about loving someone deeply and still choosing to protect them over pursuing them. That's what Cliff did. He didn't fight for her because he didn't need to. He loved her in the way that lets someone go, fully, selflessly, and when she passed, he didn't erupt in dramatic tribute. He simply whispered a truth he had cradled for over 40 years. She never knew. Those 3 words shattered something in the collective heart of his fans. In revealing his long-held secret, Cliff didn't just pay homage to Olivia, he exposed the deepest part of himself. A part few had ever seen beneath the fame and formality. The revelation reframed his entire career. Every love song, every solo Christmas performance, every lonely tour abroad. All of it was colored now by this deeper context, by the image of a man who gave his heart once and never asked for it back. That kind of emotional consistency is almost unthinkable in the modern celebrity era, where drama sells and privacy is rare. Even as his professional life continued to thrive, new albums, biographical documentaries, legacy tours, this private truth became the defining punctuation of his personal story, and it made his legacy even richer. In Cliff's life, success never seemed to require scandal. Instead, it came from authenticity. That's perhaps his most enduring lesson, the strength of holding to your values, even when it costs you something deeply personal. So when people look back on Cliff Richard's long and storied life, it won't just be the charts and awards they remember. It'll be the man who chose kindness over chaos, dignity over desire, and who finally, when the moment was right, spoke the truth that changed everything. Cliff Richard chose silence. He chose restraint. He chose to love from a distance. And when the moment came to speak, he did so with humility, reverence, and peace. Olivia wasn't just a friend, a duet partner, or a star. She was the unwritten page of his life, the one he carried quietly through the years, the one he has now finally shared with the world. If this story moved you, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below, share your favorite memory of Cliff or Olivia, and be sure to subscribe for more